This podcast is sponsored by Century 21 and Marah Court, affiliated in Toma. I've been wheeling deals lately, and Coach was busy clinching his path to playoffs, which is why we did not have an episode last week. We were power coupling our way through life. The girl bossed a little too hard to the sun, but we are back. You don't know what any of that meant, did
No,
you?
I'm riddling it all out in my head right now.
When you girl boss too close to the sun, it's like
You get a tan, or you get cancer.
oh dear, that wasn't funny.
Just saying, if you're going that close to the sun.
When you girl boss too close to the sun, it's like oh shoot, now I have so many responsibilities I can't relax. And
You
it's
murk
like
out? Like Mercury?
this isn't retrograde
Am
we're
I bringing
talking
up
about.
pretty too much science into the, what would this be? Slang?
Well, if we're getting nitty gritty, I have my bachelor's in science, you have a bachelor's in fine arts, so
Yes.
you're not out sciencing me. Anywhoozle, let's chat about
I just didn't understand a word you said, that's all.
yeah. Do we want to chat about current standings? Do we want to chat about our experience at the game? What do we think?
Well, let's go through first. Because yes, last week was a busy week for both of us.
I got 2 accepted offers on a house in one
You
day.
did. You did. You're making blazing trails.
If you live in the state of Wisconsin and want to purchase or sell a home, or you live outside of Wisconsin and want a realtor recommendation, drop a comment below. I'll leave my phone number right here.
You should not put your phone number on the web.
Call me, beat me if you want to reach me. My phone number's all over the internet.
Well, exciting news, the NHL All-Star Weekend is coming up here. The PWHL will participate in a 3-on-3 tournament during that. So that would be exciting to be back and part of that. Great chance to watch some women showcase their skills and ability. So it'll be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. Now, if we go into standings in the PWHL, which I did want to bring up because
Minnesota.
yeah, but I wanted to bring up the standings just because the point system they use in this league is different than what they use in the NHL. I actually use it for our team because every first day of every week, as long as we have a good weekend, I have our guys play like 3v3 tournaments. And so I've incorporated the point system that's used in the PWHL into our 3v3 system. And it's quite interesting because even
You've been using the PWHL point system with your kids.
Yes, I've been testing it out.
Okay.
Because it's interesting because even if your team struggles,
Yeah.
As long as you're getting the extra time, you're actually always in it
What
for
do
the
you mean
most
extra
part.
time?
So the way the system works is the point system that the PWHL uses. So if you win a game, you get 3 points. If you go into overtime, you win a game in overtime, you get 2 points. If you lose a game in overtime, you get 1 point. If you straight out lose, you get 0 points.
Why would you get less points if you win in overtime? It's like you should have won in
Because you're
regulation
sharing a
time.
point. Yeah.
Oh, so there's 3
Winning in
points
regulation
total,
is always more valuable.
and they just need to be divided up.
Yeah,
Okay.
like for the NHL, it's 2 points if you win.
Which is what you guys get 2 points if you win.
Yeah, then it's 1
if you win in
point.
overtime.
No, you still get 2 points, but it's 1 point if you lose in overtime. So it's just 2 and 1. That's it.
Oh.
But in PWHL, they do 3 points if you get a regulation win. So, for example, here, right now Minnesota leads. They're in first place with Montreal right behind. We got to watch those 2 teams play, so that was an exciting game and a really close game, which makes sense. Boston's in third, Ottawa's in fourth, New York is in fifth, and good old Toronto is in sixth. But the Leafs are doing better this year.
But you know what? Can we pause and talk about, should we look at the camera? Should we look at each other? Should we occasionally look at the camera?
Well, I'm just used to looking at people when I have a conversation with them. But I probably should get better at looking at the camera
so that I can look at you through the camera.
To make those people feel like they're involved.
Yeah.
Those creeps who are watching us.
Oh my God.
On
Dennis is
on the online computer
Dennis,
world.
Our one viewer, is a lovely man.
But everyone else, creepy.
The shining glory
I'm kidding, of course.
Toronto is Sarah Nurse. She is like getting so much attention on social media. She like stands out to me. So Sarah Nurse is, I'm assuming, biracial. I don't know her background, but she looks like me 5 years ago. Before I had a daughter, I had Sarah Nurse's hair. She's got like this kinky curly hair. She looks like your nieces, but like 20 years from now or
Oh,
10
right
years
on.
from now. Like she's gorgeous. She shows up to games in these like blue fur crop jackets and leather pants. And
Sure.
she's just like biracial, killing it, feminine. I love her. And the first PWHL game we watched on YouTube, one of the announcers goes, because I don't know if there was like a little scrap, she was getting a little scrappy or something. Um, but the female announcer goes, "How do you plan on controlling your emotions next period?" And I went, because no announcer would ask an NHL man that. There's no way.
They do.
Okay,
They
shouldn't
they
ask that to a
they
woman.
wouldn't ask it like that.
Okay, thank you.
They would word it differently for
Thank you.
sure because the terminology is a little different. That
My jaw was on the floor.
how do you manage the highs and lows?
My jaw was on the floor. And she goes, "I don't think I was emotional. I think I brought the appropriate intensity that you should bring to the game of hockey." And I was like, a queen. A queen. She's a queen. I love her.
Yeah, it's a really good answer.
Right. She was
Intelligent.
like, "You should have intensity when you're playing hockey. I'm not emotional." Like, but she handled it with such grace. I was like, "Ooh, that broadcaster just fucked up." Like, why would you
So
ask
would you
that?
say that was a boss girl movement or moment?
I think she's just amazing.
I'm just trying to use terms you used at the beginning here.
Like,
to call back.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here for her fashion. I'm here for the fact that like your nieces, like if they played hockey, uh, bless their souls, they're alive and healthy. They did not keep up with hockey, but
They
they
didn't even
could.
get a running start at it,
Sure,
so
they did. They could see themselves in her. Like I'll show you a picture of her. She's just like, I am here for her. My goal is that we like get her on
yeah.
a Zoom during this
I know
podcast.
who she is.
Love Sarah Nurse.
Um,
If you are watching, I know you're not. Tag her below. Come on the pod. Anyway. That's
yeah.
my shout out for Toronto. I know they're not doing well right now, but God, I love her.
Yeah, no, so I think it's great. Like she brings a exciting personality. It's kind of PK Sudan was a good example in NHL. Like brought a huge personality to the game. When he played, also did a ton as far as charity works. Has a whole charity set up in Montreal when he was there. I believe he carried that work over into him with Nashville. Now he's a big personality in broadcasting. Huge advocate, by the way, um, in the game of hockey for the movement of diversity. So it's great to have those personalities, I think, involved with it. I think we're in the right stage. We're in the right place in the world too to have that. A little surprising that broadcasters would ask. They probably didn't ask that question the way it's probably not the right way to put it.
No, she shouldn't have done that. And but like, what a beautiful woman to handle it that way. To be like, that was
It's an excellent
inappropriate.
answer for
She
it.
didn't say it. She didn't say it with her face because my face would have said 10,000 words if someone asked me that and I was in her situation. She just like rolled it off and answered it with so much grace and composure. And I was like, love, love her.
Yeah.
Love
No,
Sarah Nurse.
that is an excellent answer.
Um,
But no, I mean, let's talk about the game that we went to last week. Obviously, Montreal, in Minnesota. In Minnesota, really great atmosphere. It was a lot of fun for us to partake in it. Pretty close game. Obviously, it was a 2-1 win for Montreal, right? Goaltending was fantastic in that game. It kind of really because I thought Minnesota was the better of the team.
Yeah.
They had better chances.
Montreal has truly.
But they had
was
5
able to
power play
win.
opportunities and didn't score in a power play, which is I think they have a 30% power play percentage. So pretty crazy in itself that they weren't able to capitalize. But I think a fantastic game. But my biggest thing, my biggest takeaway, I think we had this conversation over there, was just the atmosphere was so different compared to being at an NHL game.
Yeah.
It was just just took all the testosterone that I was used to at an NHL game, like just the fans of like. I mean, I always refer to hockey as a blood sport. I mean, I even used to our kids. I'm like, if a little blood wasn't spilled today, it wasn't a good day for hockey.
Like you said to our daughter, "Are you bleeding? Why are you crying?"
Yeah, why are you crying? Not bleeding.
You don't say that. You hypothetically before we had a daughter, you'd say that's how you would handle it. That's not how it happens. You
It
go,
isn't.
"Oh."
I've softened up quite a bit. poor Bellamy. I don't know if he'll get that same treatment, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
that's okay. But no, I thought it was just a fun, like high energy atmosphere all the time, and the fans were great. But there were no fans like swearing at players, swearing at each other. It was also a much younger, I think, demographic than what you would see at an NHL game. I mean, it was a lot of youth teams there, obviously a lot of girls' youth teams, but it
Yeah,
was
there were
just
a
fun. It
lot
was
of
a great
girls' youth teams
atmosphere.
there.
But that was one of my biggest takeaways. It was sitting in a close game like that too, where obviously fans are glued to the ice and what's going on, but you didn't have those personalities that you've seen at men's games. That was one thing I definitely noticed.
Are you talking about being obnoxious?
I mean, depends on how you look at it, but yeah, um, like some of the things that you see at men's game, obviously you couldn't do in that environment. But I mean, I just thought that was kind of neat, where it removed that whole aspect of the game. So I think that made it kind of at times more exciting for some of the fans because there was less distractions almost. There's less distractions in the crowd as far as like what's going on, and it was more able to be just enjoy the moment.
Watching good hockey.
Even the music selection was very different, but it was a lot of Taylor Swift, obviously.
You didn't know that, so every time a song would come on, I'd be like, "Do you know who sings this?" Be like, "No, it's literally just a whole Taylor Swift playlist, with a couple other things sprinkled in." But, um, anyway, so yeah, we went on a Wednesday night, right? People aren't going to be super drunk. They're not going to be belligerent. There's going to be less men there, and there were a lot of young girls there. And so I think one, people were watching their mouths. Two, it's Wednesday night energy. Three, when you have all female sports, the energy does change because I have competed in competitions for strongman where there are men involved, and it is very much like a lot more oorah, a lot more spitting, a lot more like there's just a different like I don't even want to say edge, but like you're right, the testosterone is just there versus I competed after we had our daughter. The last competition I did was it was Rebel Queen. It was an all female competition and I had so much more fun. The women were just so there for each other. There was only one other person in my weight class and she and I like we would cheer each other on. I'd be right there on the platform and she
Yeah, it
was
was way
shoulder
more
pressing
supportive.
like we were there for each other. I was 11 months postpartum with my daughter lifting like 170 pounds over my head. Like she was there cheering me on. Um, it's just a whole different energy where we're there to support each other doing something cool. Um, and so you see a lot more on social media. They'll mic up players. Like you'll see a lot more of girls going up to girls, women going up to women on other teams, and just being like, "Hey, what's up?" Like they're friends. Like they're so there for each other, supporting one another because they're doing something so historic that it's like I know we're on
Yeah.
different teams, and yes, I'm out for blood, but also like, good job, girl. You know what I mean? It's a whole different vibe, and I personally like it more. You know?
Well, I do feel like they're under. I look at the camera when I talk.
Sure.
I do feel like they're under a greater spotlight, especially in year one, where there's obviously a lot of pressure on them to compete and have highly competitive games, but also they want to set, I guess, the expectations. And also, like, we live in a hyper social world, so they have to be a little more conscious, probably, of their actions and what the words they use. And I think especially if you ever see any of them talking, and they play that video before the game, different interviews about talking how that important it is to have a game of hockey now for women, and how that is historical in its sense and it's changing the landscape. So I think they all understand like how important it is that they're positive ambassadors of the game.
Well,
That's why you
and
don't see
like
as much as that.
you don't see like so like you don't get the stereotype like women of being catty. You know what I mean? And I
Mm.
think there's a concerted effort for it not to turn into that, right? Like you can be competitive without being catty. And I think they do a really good job of creating that healthy, like fun sports rivalry, but
They just do a
also
good job of separating business with personalities, maybe.
mhm.
You know, they're there to win. Obviously, to help their team win, but once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, they're also not playing each other 60 some times, so it's a little different that side of it.
Yeah, but there are no rivalries yet, too. Yeah, that's a good
True.
point.
So Minnesota and
Montreal might be.
Montreal should be a rivalry because it was when they were original six. I mean, New York was a great rivalry with New
Boston.
Jersey,
Oh.
and even Boston way back in the day. But Boston and Toronto used to be a huge rivalry way back, and still is now. But Boston always seems to take Toronto in the postseason. So Toronto has Boston in that first round. It's probably going to be Boston.
Yeah. But anyway, we had fun. There were a lot of people there. The crowd was into it. We were into it. Minnesota couldn't pull out a win while we were there, but that's okay. It was good hockey. What else did we notice from that game? I was a little upset, like when you went to the concessions. Like I get that that's the Wild arena, but like everyone was walking around with souvenir Wild cups, and I'm like, that's not what we're here for. They need their own cups on their own game night. Like let's get these women their own popcorn tins. You know, PWHL, if you need someone for PR, and this is a good segue into what we're going into next, I'm hireable and certified. So keep me on the roster, keep me on a short list. But like, yeah, there were souvenir popcorn tins cost like $15, and they're walking around with Wild logos on them. Like, there is opportunity there. There's room there for growth. Like
Year one, there's a lot of
I
building.
know,
building
but
blocks.
I hope that next year after, when you go to a game, it feels like it's just as much, or at least a little bit more, their home as it is the Wild's. I know the Wild has legacy there. It's been like, I get that, but they gotta elbow in some room
Yeah,
for
I think that comes into
themselves.
place when you don't have teams representing a state, but they start representing cities.
Mm.
It's a little bit more easier. So I don't know if there'd be just Minnesota next year, but if they become, you know, Twin Cities next year, or New York becomes a New
That's
York
not really
team.
fair because the Wild is Minnesota Wild.
Yes.
Like Boston is Boston Bruins, so I don't really know that you can make that comparison. Like
Yeah, I guess
Wild
that's
is
true.
Minnesota Wild, so you can't really blame it on that. I don't think you can, not at least for Minnesota's sake. But I hope to see like commemorative popcorn tins for PWHL for Minnesota. I'd have a purple popcorn tin. You know,
Yeah.
it to me it didn't feel like their space yet, and I know it's year one. And I hope
Yeah,
to see
that's
that
true.
change. It didn't feel like everything on the walls was Wild. I get it, but I hope to see it incrementally change to make it
Yeah.
feel like their barn too. Because right now it certainly doesn't, and they deserve that, to feel like their place.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, and definitely something for them to build toward in year two.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're on home ice, right? Like it's nice you see your team's banners. It is your home to protect, right? And if they had more stake in it, I think that would go a long way to make the athletes feel more valued. At least, I don't know. I don't play hockey, but I'd like to see the women who come before me on the banners up there. And
Yeah, the fanfare part of it is exciting for a player. Makes it more exciting for you to play the game.
Yeah, it is hard to do in year one, but hopefully this legacy will start to change things moving forward. But speaking of missed opportunities for PR, I want to talk about Hockey Day Minnesota. Um, so like I've mentioned
We
before,
talked about this before the podcast. We're a little bit on different sides of it.
I'm gonna try not to be as intense, but though that'd be good for views. So I follow, I hope, all the players or most of them on social media, and I follow Hockey Day Minnesota. And maybe some of the players were there, but as far as I could tell on the Hockey Day website and the Hockey Day Instagram and PWHL socials, they weren't there in any sort of official capacity. And I'm speaking specifically about Minnesota because Hockey Day Minnesota happens in Minnesota. Um, I was kind of disappointed they weren't there. Through count, there were 9 men or boys hockey games that happened over that weekend, and there was 3 girls games. Now, the opening ceremony had girls doing the puck drop, which to me felt a little performative, though it's a good stride. Um, because the PWHL players weren't there in an official capacity. They had guys who do a podcast show up and do a signing and a skate with them. But I didn't see any PWHL Minnesota autograph stations. I didn't see skate with PWHL. I didn't see PWHL doing a commemorative puck drop. I didn't see no outdoor game. Like maybe they were there, but not in a way that the media covered. Not that a
Mm-hmm.
way that I could find. And I mean, talk about just getting the word out there and getting attendance jacked up. I know Hockey Day in Minnesota doesn't take place in Minneapolis, but my God, it's Minnesota, the state. You know, you have a chance to bring the fan base to more than outside of the Twin Cities. Why did no one from the front office put two and two together? And maybe it's just scrambling for the first season. Like there's a lot that happens behind closed doors and you're just playing catch up the first year. Um, But like as far as I'm concerned, that was a missed opportunity for some really good publicity and a really good jack up in attendance.
Yeah, I mean, in all the games leading up, all the PWHL games leading up to Hockey Day in Minnesota, like were doing interviews with individual players who had participated in it in the past,
Mhm.
whether playing, college or high school hockey, primarily high school hockey. So I thought that was good. Obviously, they had the one female player who was from War Roads,
Mhm.
she was part of the video that they did, as well as a number of men players. So I think they tried to touch on it. Yeah, I think you're right though. They probably could have done more. Again, War Road, Minnesota, pretty far north, pretty far from the cities, obviously.
I don't
But
care. Like
yeah,
they should
but
have been there.
yeah, I mean, they probably could have done more for that event. At least roping it in as far as everything, especially everything going on in the first year of the PWHL. Now, I'm sure next year would be better. They might
Mhm.
have a game that coordinates with it, kind of like the NHL game that did.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, they probably could have done more. I mean, they tried to do interviews leading up to it, so I think they try to get it involved in part of the conversation. But yeah, I mean, obviously, typically men's hockey is going to take spotlight in that event, whether it's the high school game, which was I was able to watch part of it. It's a really great game, or the NHL game, obviously. So
I think
something to
that's all
work toward.
fine. I want to point out they don't have to play a game. They don't have to play in the outdoor rink. I get it. That's all good.
But you just want to be part of
Tape one of
partaking in the
them
day,
doing
or
the starting lineup for the girls team.
yeah,
How much would that have meant? What an Instagrammable moment. Like I'm thinking content and impact on there were only three girls games. Why didn't they have a PWHL player do the starting lineup in the locker room before every one of those games? Why? I mean, yes, Minnesota is what it might take 6 hours to drive across the whole state. I don't care how far north they are. Send somebody. But I was just kind of disappointed. There was so much opportunity there to spark attendance, to spark excitement about the PWHL, and I kind of feel like
at least continue just to continue the lift, the excitement about the league and the
and
progression of
girls
it.
hockey, girls
Yeah,
high school hockey. Don't even make it about the PWHL. Make it about girls hockey and making that more exciting because you just said boys hockey is going to take precedent. Well, there are NHL players showing up. I just, as someone who comes from a marketing
it's hard to argue.
background,
TJ Oshie is from War Road. I mean,
yeah, as someone who comes from a marketing background, I'm just like, why didn't we? Come on, here. There's so much room for such great content and such great real life impact if they would have
sure.
found some way to show up. They don't have to play a hockey game. There's so many things they could have done autographs. They could have done an open skate. They could have done the lineup. They could have done.
But to play devil's advocate, there's just so much more history with men's hockey as far as former players from there that you can use for because this is the first year of professional hockey, the PWHL.
Mm,
So you don't have maybe that you have some Olympic pedigree. Don't get me wrong, in the college pedigree, but you don't have players who have played years of pro hockey that you can bring back and kind of be those ambassadors
Well,
right
sure, but
away.
it's just as exciting because this is year one, right? You're creating history, so you're not going to have a pedigree until you get out and start doing these things. And by no
Sure,
way
I'm just
am
saying it's easier
I.
when you have former players who have played professionally for a number of years.
No, I understand.
Take part. I mean, they had Olympians, which is again before this probably the highest level in the U.S. obviously, but unless they went overseas to play.
I get
so
it.
I'm just saying maybe it's just the numbers. I mean, we talked about it last podcast. Like, I think it was like 16% of all USA hockey registrations were women compared to men. So I'm sure numbers are part of the fact there, but I do agree with you. Like they could have done more, especially with everything going on in the PWHL to make it a bigger deal, a bigger event for women's hockey. I'm not
criticizing the players like by any means. They are focused on hockey and they show up to what like PR opportunities the team tells them to go to. I'm sure, or like someone invites them to do it, whatever. I'm kind of disappointed in front office staff, whoever handles their PR and their media. So by no means am I criticizing the players. I think they're wonderful. Go them in every way.
You
Fantastic.
think the organization should have did more to get boots on the ground? And
no notes for the players. Notes for the players. They're great. I think more should have been done in the front of the house to kind of see that as an opportunity to grow excitement, to start that pedigree. Because you're right, men's hockey is always going to have more clout because there have been years and years and years of players. But to be able to grow that legacy where women's hockey has a chance to feel as exciting to everyone as men's hockey and be on that same level, it starts now. It starts in year one. They should be showing up to events like this, not just Hockey Day Minnesota, but it's exciting they're doing that 3v3. It's exciting they're doing the All-Star game. Like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Like, they should be doing stuff like that, just like the men do All-Star games. I love that for them. I love that that's coming up. It'll be exciting. Hopefully we have time to watch it together.
I'll be out of town.
Hopefully we have time to watch it together. I know you're not busy.
Yeah, no. So I mean, I think that was a great point to bring up, and maybe a good ending point for us this episode. I did have notes here for people who wanted to watch some games coming up. February 3rd, Minnesota is playing Toronto, so that should be a fun game for Minnesota fans to watch. Toronto's in last place.
Remind the people again.
They're in last place right now, but they're coming back. They've got a good push the second half.
Go Nurse.
They've only played 8 games, so
Nursey.
They got plenty of time.
Hockey name.
February 4th, there's 2 games going on. New York will play Ottawa, and then Montreal will be playing Boston, and that should be a great. Hopefully, that develops to be such a really good rivalry there. Kind of coordinates with the rivalry of Montreal and NHL versus the Boston Bruins.
Minnesota has a home game on Valentine's Day too.
They do.
Yeah. If you feel like being romantic, you can take another half-day date.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. It was a really good time. I look forward to going again.
They don't call it Passage or Princess for a reason.
I have never heard that before. But...
Yeah, you get your book, you get your snacks, you get your control of the radio.
You did have all those things going on. You did read a little bit.
I did. I be learning. Any hoozles. Again, this podcast is brought to you by Marah Valancourt, Century 21 affiliated in Toma. If you're buying a house in Wisconsin, call me. If you're buying a house outside of Wisconsin, call me and I will find you a realtor.
Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see all of you, or some of you can listen to us next week.
Go Woodsman.
Yes, go Woodsman.